thank you for that prior presentation. I made this, had this presentation done many times. In fact, it's probably about 50% of my travels are talking about alternative technologies, or as I have on here, sustainable mobility. And I haven't had a better lead-in to this presentation in any of the meetings I've had before. So much of what I say is going to align to what was just discussed.
It's for sale.
I'll pay you afterwards. First of all, it's just a pleasure to be here. As I say, I am the marketing manager for our North America fleet operations, but I also am the alternative fuel manager for Ford Motor Company. So as this energy conservation or increase of fuel costs that has gone on, especially as it relates to the automobile industry, in that I've been very involved in this on many panel sessions. What I like to do is, rather than sit here and really talk about us, I like to look at this as more of an educational as it relates to the automobile industry. And I'll bring up the other manufacturers. I sit on many panel sessions with members from General Motors and Chrysler and such, and I really consider them friends of mine, especially as it relates to this. So when I bring something up, it's going to be based on facts of things that they've said. And again, it won't be any bashing or anything, because this isn't a subject that anybody should criticize anybody about. First, I want to just thank
The next one, yeah, that one.
There we go. Thanks. First of all, I just want to thank the Postal Service and the partnership that we've had with them for the years. We rely, I mean, as we say, it is a partnership. We truly appreciate that we've been with them for so many years, not only in the past, but even in the present. We rely on Wayne and his team, and we are constantly being asked by our engineers, as they are developing future technologies, about the opportunities to speak to the Postal Service and get their feedback on, will this application, will these future technologies work for them? And probably more than Wayne or his team would even like to do. But they're always coming to me and saying, hey, we have to develop this. Do you think it's something the Postal Service would be interested in? So it isn't just that we value the partnership we've had with them in the past, it's something that we truly want to continue in the future. And it hasn't been just with the partnership of vehicles in general. It really has still focused on green vehicles, from electric vehicles, electrical postal service vehicles that were based on our Ranger platform that we put in service here, to today's vehicle. I always like to kind of bring stories in, but I think my family, my wife and my daughter, are sick of every time we pull up to a stoplight and there happens to be a postal vehicle next to us, I will give them the explanation of how that vehicle is based on the Explorer platform, and it's got a 4-liter flexible fuel engine, and going on. After a while, they just blank out. But that's the type of, we really are engaged, and this is a subject that we want to work with the Postal Service on, of what can we bring to the party into the future. Now, this, if anybody really wants, I'm not going to go into great detail about our sustainability initiatives. If you go on to Ford.com, you can download, there's an environmental website there, and we have pamphlets there that talk about our sustainability initiatives, from manufacturing to vehicles, a whole host of things, of everything that we try to do. But from the standpoint of vehicles, sustainability has been with us since the forefront of Henry Ford, who really, actually, he did a lot of farming and was one of the first that came up with ethanol. First vehicles were ethanol as a source of fueling the vehicles from soybeans. So it wasn't a subject that he wasn't engaged in, and for the reasons that have been mentioned before, all of these things just changed as the advent of petroleum becoming to the forefront. So it wasn't that we forced the direction away from there, it was more of the industry. I want to talk a little bit about, because it constantly comes up in presentations, that said, well, years ago Bill Ford made the statement that you would have 250,000 hybrids on the road by 2010, and that was true. We did have a plan to do that, and one of the elements that we saw was that there was going to be a renewed emphasis on hybrid vehicles from the administration, from the government. We work a lot with Postal Service and other purchasers who are required to meet the Energy Policy Act for purchases of vehicles. And the Energy Policy Act requires certain industries to buy a certain percentage of their vehicles as alternative fuels. when the last edition was going around, we truly thought that hybrids were going to be brought into that. And so we were banking on the ability to capitalize on that to expand our hybrid portfolio. Although incentives were placed out there on the purchase of hybrids, and really to some degree it was incentives only on the first 60,000 you sell, after that it goes away, it wasn't brought into the Energy Policy Act. And at that time we realized that putting your eggs all into one basket was just simply not the right strategy. So rather than concentrate just on hybrid electric, we really expanded our portfolio to include, again, hybrids. We're continuing to focus on those, clean diesels, and we'll talk about all of these, biodiesel, which fits in there, ethanol, and then go into the advanced lithium battery hybrids, and we'll talk a little bit about that, and I will talk about a little bit about the Volt and General Motors and that. Hydrogen internal combustion engines, H2ICE, and then ultimately fuel cell. And what really it boils down to is the last statement on there, that ultimately it truly is going to be the consumers that decide what technology best fits their needs, because that is not something that we're going to be able to force, nor do we want to. We really want it to be a consumer-driven solution. This is a sobering slide, and I'm actually glad because it follows along the prior presentation, and this is what we see as the alternative fuel migration path. And you can see between now and really getting to 2012, you're just going to be in the startup of biofuels, and this includes things like biodiesel or ethanol, or factors of that. And unfortunately, you're going to probably continue to see, as it was pointed out, a growth in fossil fuel as advanced technology comes into use, but it still is going to increase, but peak during this time period. So as a result, we as a manufacturer have to concentrate on, okay, what do we do in this near time period? How do we bring about improvements in these technologies that can lead to improved fuel economy or reduce CO2 emissions? 2012 to 2020, now's when you're going to see the second generation come in to play on the biofuels. And one of those really will be, hopefully, this migration from ethanol based on corn-based or those types of products into more cellulosic ethanol, be it switchgrass or something there. In order to make some of these viable, you really need to migrate to something other than, as was pointed out, corn or those types of factors. And then you can see there we'll get fleet programs. We'll start to really be able to evaluate plug-in hybrid electrics, how's that going to be, or hydrogen vehicles, continuing to test for hydrogen vehicles. And then long-term, 2020 to 2030 or beyond, that's when you'll really start to see the renewable fuels coming into play. Clean alternatives, electricity, hydrogen, and those items. Bottom line is we're prepared to deliver any one of these. We could come out and have vehicles that can run on cellulosic ethanol if it was out there tomorrow. We have capabilities for lithium. We have capabilities for all of those as the technologies come in. And that's really what I wanted to talk about, is these different technologies that are out here. And this is advanced gasoline engines. And as has been pointed out, you really have to change consumers' behavior. This is what they know. This is what they've grown up on. This is what they're comfortable with. Fortunately or unfortunately, this is it. And again, fossil fuel or petroleum-based gasoline has just reached, has gotten to this level so quickly that you can't adapt always that way. All of our vehicles are compatible with ethanol fuels up to 10%. So again, if everybody could run on just 10% ethanol, if every station did it, we would reduce our gasoline consumption by 10% tomorrow. If every oil company would do a blend of ethanol with gasoline. And again, the other part about it is gasoline, as it relates to emissions, is approaching near zero. Now, that doesn't relate to, I'm going to say CO2, because the only way you can reduce CO2 emissions is to burn less fuel. But in terms of the other nitrous oxides and everything, we have really reached a peak, a point of zero emissions on the vehicle. So now that we're there, now the item is let's make it more fuel efficient and start reducing CO2. Challenges is fuel economy trade-offs require to comply with increasing stringent emissions and safety. As we bring in more safety equipment, as we bring in more emissions equipment, vehicles are becoming heavier. And that's always a challenge. As they become heavier, fuel economy is worth. And then the cost and effectiveness of the incremental technology. And you can just see some of the key facts. There's many things that we can do to improve the gasoline engine. And I just want to focus on one here. We launched this at the Detroit Auto Show. It's called EcoBoost, and it is gasoline turbo direct injected engine. Requires nothing, no change at all. Just this technology alone will allow us to create a 4-cylinder engine that gets the performance of a 6-cylinder if it's required, and deliver fuel economy improvement of 20% and CO2 reductions of 15%. We see this technology, this engine, as going a long way across all vehicle lines. We can take customers out of V8 engines and trucks and drop them down to, we have one here, we have one I'll go into that we have. It is a 4-cylinder engine, EcoBoost, that will deliver 263 horsepower. Now that might not be required in a 4-cylinder, but when you think about a truck or a full-size pickup or something like that, where they require that type of performance, we're able to deliver this. And we're proud to say that this EcoBoost engine technology is going to be rolled out in May of next year. And over the next 5 years, we are going to have it annually in over 500,000 of our vehicles, and it's going to be expanded. So when we talk about can advanced engine or gasoline engines continue into the future during this period of time where we're all testing it, we believe yes. And this is what we're doing to try to still improve it versus what everybody has today. E85 flex fuel, and again, it was covered there. Benefits, it does promote U.S. energy security. It's very, I have on here incremental cost is absorbed by Ford. It's about $150 per vehicle that we have to put into the engine in order for a vehicle to run on ethanol, simply because it's more abrasive and such. Challenges is two things. One, E85 has less energy content. So if you are burning a vehicle on E85, it's about 30%. Your fuel economy is about 30% less. So for it to equal out for the consumer, it has to cost about 30 cents less than gasoline, or 30% less than gasoline. And I have a station right where I live, and gasoline, let's say, is $3 a gallon. E85 is $2.70 a gallon. Well, you can see, in order, apples to apples, ethanol would have to be $2.10 a gallon. So if they're going to run on ethanol, it's going to cost the consumer more, which they don't want to have. But what really surprises me is, if it's only 15% petroleum product, why every time gasoline goes up by 10%, does the ethanol go up by 10%? And that kind of boggles my mind, how the ratio of increase is exactly the same for both ethanol and for gasoline. So I haven't figured that one out. But that's one of the challenges that's out there. We have many, there's 6 million E85 vehicles on the road today. But the biggest problem that you have is this right here. That's the ethanol infrastructure in the U.S. I have many people out there that say, I need to run on E85. But Texas, you can see that they're down there with only 4 or 5 stations. So is E85 a viable alternative? Not until the infrastructure really takes place. It's a possibility, but again, as we said, not until it gets to until it gets to cellulosic and expands out there. And that really is what comes up with all of these, the chicken and the egg. What comes first? Do you develop the technology and hope that the infrastructure follows? Or wait and see what the infrastructure is going to be? And that's the challenges we have with the energy providers. Advanced technology diesel. This is something we're looking at very, very a lot, especially in there. In our truck lineups. What can we do? Europe is, of course, very pro-diesel, but their emission regulations are different. And everybody says, why don't you just bring over your European diesels? Well, it's just not possible without a lot of cost. And diesel has still not been accepted as a technology with the North American consumer beyond the heavy-duty trucks or heavy-duty commercial applications. But I was just in New York this past day and talking to New York Taxi Commission, and they have 13,000 taxis that they have out there, and we were working with them. In fact, excuse me if my voice is a little hoarse, because we launched a concept taxi in New York yesterday at the auto show, and I was telling everybody it was at 8 o'clock or 8:30 that we revealed it, and there was so much excitement over this vehicle that we were on the floor talking to the reporters until 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And that's one of the things that we're looking at, because they require long-term durability, but they want to get improved performance and low displacement. And they are very interested in low displacement diesels for their taxi fleet as a possible solution. So if we can find a couple of large players out there that can change the mindset that diesel isn't a good technology for North America, then we might be able to see this expand. At the present time, we really don't see it as being much more than 5% of the total market if we were to come out with it right now. But we'll see. We're continuing to do market research on this all the time. Hybrids are an interesting one out there. And I have plug-in hybrids here. I actually had a couple of slides. I just want to talk about hybrids in general. And this is one of the challenges that we face on technology. The Escape hybrid, the hybrids that are in place today are nickel metal hydride batteries. And when hybrids were being introduced, that was supposedly the technology that was going to be used for a longer term. So that's what all the manufacturers did. They brought this in and they looked at it, and it was a very high cost of the batteries. And then all of a sudden we put them in assuming the cost would come down, and that never did because the battery manufacturers switched into something else. So to find a battery manufacturer that is interested in making nickel metal hydride batteries today is very difficult to do. We are so constrained in the number of batteries because they're all on plug-in or lithium hybrid. And we truly believe longer term, lithium batteries are the hybrid technology that would be out there. But we made the bet on nickel metal 3 or 4 years ago too, so you don't know. Right now, a nickel metal hydride battery is about $15,000. And when you take a look at the volt, in Automotive Beat, it's an independent article, it had a quote by General Motors that it says here, they need another 4 months of production on the test of the lithium battery plug-in hybrid that they were going to introduce in 2010. And it says, and when the vehicle debuts, the price will include an unspecified but very substantial fee to cover unexpected warranty expenses, they said. And the cost of the battery is in the range exceeding $10,000 for them. And in today's press, if you go online, Bob Lutz came out and just said that when they bring out this vehicle, they will be losing money on every vehicle they sell because they simply cannot, the American consumer, unfortunately, while they want to be environmentally friendly, there is a price point that they are willing to get to. And my assumption is there's no way they can bring this car into the price point that the consumer is willing to pay. And that's a challenge. And people say, well, just do it anyways. And I go, you know, that's fine. But then if you were the Volt automotive company, you'd be out of business if that was the only vehicle that you produced. So here's the challenge you come up with is we're betting that lithium batteries will come down in cost. To what level, we don't know. But who knows if a year or 2 years from now, these technology experts have moved on to a different technology that we aren't aware of right now. And that's just the problems that we face here. And again, I'm not reading every slide. You can see what's on there. I'm just kind of giving you some highlights as we go along. Fuel cell, that's the big buzz out there, but when will fuel cells actually be brought into service? Long term, we believe this is what the future holds. It provides everything we need to get to. The challenges are they're very, very expensive today. To build a single fuel cell vehicle prototype is about $500 million, it's about $500,000. And to put in a hydrogen refueling station is around $1 million. So this comes back to that chicken and egg. What comes first? Do you develop the hydrogen cars to get out there, but the infrastructure doesn't exist, or do you wait for the infrastructure to get out there and bring out the vehicles? And that's why although we see this as being technology of the future, it probably will not be until the 2020, 2025 time frame from being a mainstream vehicle. So where do we go from here? Well, what we see is it really comes down to more than just the automotive industry. We do have a responsibility. We need to accelerate the advanced technology in vehicle deployment. We accept that responsibility, and we are working to do that. And as I said, we're working on multiple technologies. We really need to continue to improve the efficiency of our existing products, and bringing out technologies like EcoBoost is going to do that for the consumers. And also, it was what was spoken about earlier, we need to educate the consumers. I was telling a story of a customer who wanted to reduce their CO2 emissions. And I went out there and said, well, the only way you're going to reduce your CO2 emissions is by burning less fuel. So we took a look at their portfolio of vehicles, and their sales representatives were in large sedans. I said, well, if we could migrate them from the large sedan down to four-cylinder Fusions, which is great performance, that get in the neighborhood of 23, 24 in the city and up to 30 on the highway, I mean, you'll get significant. They said, we can't put our reps in smaller cars. They'll be up in arms. That'll create an HR problem. So it's balancing this chicken and egg. They know what the solution is, but they don't want to go there because of the issues facing, from that standpoint. So, but we need to continue the education. The fuel industry, they need to invest in developing and marketing E85 if that's near term. Unfortunately, the large oil companies, if you go around the country, you'll find that the majority of the E85 stations are in independently owned operations. They're not in the large stations. And we also have to get them to support cellulosic ethanol as a strategy. And so far, I really haven't seen them get on board. We have a great partnership with BP in terms of hydrogen and such, but it's between that balance of longer term and near term that we need their support. And we need to have them increase their R&D into like carbon biofuels, advanced low biofuels like that. The government. We just need to have the government continue to do energy conscious fashion. And again, similar to what I said about that the company that I was working with, take a look at the vehicle choice. What is it that you need versus what you want to have? Are the two aligned? Can you migrate to smaller vehicles? Can you migrate to lower displacement engines? And we're working on all of these. We have driving schools. We're working with customers out there, large fleet customers, who are asking for driver management classes to help them improve. So that's what it really is. Longer term, it's going to be an integrated approach amongst these four entities here that will really deliver what the future holds. And all of these, as we say, will align to what the Postal Service wants. As we move forward, we are thinking about this with the Postal Service in mind, and as they are ready to enter into these advanced technologies, we will be there to support them. So with that, I just want to thank you very much.